And we are live. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the 10 ways law enforcement investigates a drug case. And so the first one, we're going to jump right into it, is traffic stop. So you're going to see this where if they're already on somebody's radar, they're going to follow them, they're going to look for any traffic violations, and then they're going to pull them over and conduct a drug investigation. They're normally going to see plain smell marijuana used as justification to do a search or to get a canine there. And so number one way law enforcement's going to investigate a drug case is traffic stops. Number two, confidential buys. And so here you're going to look at somebody that is working for law enforcement. They meet up with law enforcement. Law enforcement is going to give them money. They're going to give them some ground rules. And they're going to say, these are the drugs that we want you to buy. That person's going to go to the suspected individual, buy them from their supplier, come back, do a debriefing with law enforcement, give them the drugs that they've bought. They're going to answer any questions that they have, and the law enforcement is going to use that for probable cause to arrest that individual at a later time. Surveillance. And so if you're on law enforcement's radar for drug activity, they're going to be looking for you. They're going to be looking at whether or not there's lots of people coming in and out of the house. They call that high traffic area, to where there's people that are coming into the house for 30 seconds, a minute, and a lot of people coming in and out. That's really what they're looking for. Or if they're going to see any just open exchanges, whether it be on the front porch or so forth, or just that's the surveillance that they're looking for. 4, knock and talk. So whenever they don't have a search warrant, but they still want to talk to them and try to get close to the suspect, they're going to come and do what's called a knock and talk, where they come to the house, they'll knock, they'll say who they are, they'll say, hey, would you like to talk to us, or can we come in? And what they're looking for is plain smell marijuana to get into the house, or just consent to come into the house and see what's going on in there. Can they see any plain drugs in plain view that's going to justify a search warrant later on, or a search at that time? And so if they don't have a search warrant, they're going to be looking to do a knock and talk just to gain as much information possible to get that probable cause. 5, trash pull. And so this is a situation where the house is currently under surveillance. They are watching the house. They're looking to see what activity is going on at the house, and then people are throwing out their trash. But before the garbage man gets it, they're going to pull it, and they're going to look to see if there's any drug paraphernalia in it. There's going to be lots of baggies that would indicate drugs being prepackaged. Are they looking for drug residue? And all of those types of things that are going to enhance their affidavit later on to try to search the residence for during a search warrant. 6, social media investigation. Now, you'd be very surprised what people think that is acceptable to be posting on social media. There's people that will actively flaunt selling drugs on whether it be Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, and if you are in any way, shape, or form on law enforcement's radar, they're going to be looking at it. They're going to be taking screenshots of it, and they're just going to use that as a basis to help bolster that. And I keep on using the word probable cause to get that search warrant, so they can make the big bust. And so keep that in mind. 7, anonymous tip. So what we're talking about here is Crime Stoppers, or an angry neighbor, or somebody that just calls law enforcement, or calls a tip line, or writes something to say, I think something shady is going on over there. You might want to go check that out. And so that's how a lot of these investigations are going to start, because of just somebody making an anonymous tip. But it's important to know about that anonymous tip is that in and of itself is not going to lead to a search warrant or an arrest. The law enforcement is going to need some sort of corroboration because of that anonymous nature of that tip. They're going to need something, and that's where the surveillance, that's where the trash pulls come into play. And but that's a lot of times that's how these things start, is just an anonymous tip. Snitching. So there's two forms of how this can go down. One is somebody has a case and they want to make things better. They want to get a better deal. They want to maybe not let their case go federal and stay in the state court. So they give what's called a proffer, and that they use that information for historical information. Who is your supplier? How did you get the drugs? Where did you get them from? How much did you buy them from? What quantities were you doing? And so those are obvious. We could talk about that for a lot of times, but that's one side. The other thing is, if they're currently doing surveillance and then they think somebody went into the house to buy drugs, they're going to follow that individual out of the house, and they're going to try to conduct a traffic stop, and they're going to try to get them to say, I bought drugs from that house. And so that's along the lines of the surveillance of trying to get into the house, into probable cause, to get the search warrant to search the house. And so snitching happens all the time. 9, catfishing. And so what I mean by this is, and you see this a lot of times in overdose drug cases, where an individual overdoses, dies, and a family member or a friend allows law enforcement, as they're investigating the death, to get into the deceased phone. Law enforcement will then go through all of the text message information or social media messages and try to find out who the supplier was that he or she bought the drugs from that caused the death. And so what they'll do, if they can get there in time and to do that before it hits the news cycle, before it goes on social media and people realize that the person has now died, is they'll pretend to be the person in order to set up a drug deal. They'll name a location, they'll give an amount, and then at that point it's a sting operation where at that point they'll arrest the supplier. 10, and this is the holy grail of how a drug case can be investigated, and this is a search warrant. And so how a search warrant works is law enforcement investigates the case. They think that there's enough for probable cause, and they will write out in the search warrant the place to be searched and an exact location and with as much description as possible. And then in the affidavit portion, they're going to explain what their investigation is consisted of. They're going to explain if they've done surveillance, if they've controlled buys, if they did a trash pull, or if they've set up a buy on somebody, or if they followed somebody that had just left the house and that person says that I bought that from that house. And so they're trying to make a link to the place that they want to search and the probable cause on why they should be able to search that residence. And in the search warrant, they're going to be requesting from the judge to search everything that could be associated with drug activity. We're talking phones, cars, computers, any electronic devices, any cash that is around, scales, anything that could lead them to a drug bust, that they're going to flip the whole house or apartment upside down and look for any and all evidence that could support a case. And so that is how a search warrant works. So to recap, we've got 10 ways for law enforcement to conduct a drug investigation. First is a traffic stop. Second is a controlled or a confidential buy. Third is surveillance. Fourth is a knock and talk. Fifth is a trash pull. 6 is a social media investigation. 7 is an anonymous tip. 8 is snitching. 9 is catfishing. And 10 is a search warrant. If you have any questions whatsoever about drug cases here in Kentucky or in federal court, please give us a call at 859-259-0727. My name is Abe Mashni, and thank you so much for watching.